The divine is no more. The divine remains absent, and we have ended its reign. This statement, penned at the close of the 19th century, might be the most relevant phrase for our time. Before you dismiss it as mere religious provocation, hear me out. This wasn't a celebration of the divine's demise or an attack on belief. Instead, it was a stark diagnosis of the crumbling certainties that had sustained the human spirit for centuries. When the divine was declared absent, it signified the end of external meaning, absolute morality, guaranteed purpose, and eternal truth. The divine's absence represents the collapse of everything that structured our existence. You feel this today, even if you can't name it. Everything seems fine. Food in the fridge, people around you, maybe a job, maybe plans, but inside, something is off. You feel a void, a disconnection from life, as if everything is happening around you, but you're not truly present. No one sees it, and you try not to see it either. But at night, when the noise stops, the question arises: what is the meaning of all this? You're not alone in feeling this way. The truth is, we live in a world where ancient beliefs have faded, but we haven't created anything to replace them. We were raised to study, work, build families, and be good citizens. But at some point, this narrative unravels. You realize that what was promised doesn't fulfill you. You followed the script, yet you feel empty. That's where the philosopher comes in. He had the courage to face this emptiness head-on, without illusions or false positivity. He understood that the divine's absence wasn't the end, but the beginning of a new challenge. Living without predefined truths, facing the world without crutches, and building real meaning or being consumed by nothingness. If you're here, it's because you feel this too. Maybe you've tried to convince yourself that everything is fine, but deep down, you know something is broken. I tell you, this isn't the end. It can be the beginning, but only if you have the courage to continue. In this video, I'll show you exactly what the philosopher meant, and more importantly, what you can do with this harsh truth. Because after the divine fades, what remains is you, and you better be ready for that. Have you ever noticed how modern life seems designed to avoid silence? Everything is noise. Everything is speed. Your day starts with notifications and ends with distractions. You wake up with a to-do list and fall asleep with a sense of tiredness that's not just physical, it's existential. Amid this flow, everyone pretends everything is fine, but it's not. The promise of progress was clear. More comfort, more technology, more freedom would make us happier. But now that we have all this, why do we feel so empty? Why, despite civilization's achievements, do rates of depression and anxiety keep rising? Why do we feel this nameless pain, this fatigue that doesn't go away with sleep, this restlessness that no achievement can calm? It's because the modern world has created an illusion, the illusion that we are in control, that simply going with the flow will lead us to meaning. Choose a profession, be productive, succeed, post about it. But what no one says is that this script we blindly follow was built on pillars that have already crumbled. The morality that guided us has lost its center. The religion that promised salvation has become just another product. Even science, our new deity, no longer offers purpose, only explanations. The philosopher saw this before anyone else. He predicted that by ending the divine, we didn't just kill an idea, we killed the structure that supported everything we were. The problem isn't living without faith. The problem is continuing to act as if there were still an absolute truth behind everything, while deep down, we know there isn't. We live amid a contradiction. We are free to do anything, but we have lost the why of anything. You feel this when you finish an important project and think, what now? You feel it when you're surrounded by people yet still feel alone. You feel it when you achieve what you always wanted and realize that nothing has changed inside. This is the emptiness of a world where the old beliefs have died and the new ones have not yet been born. The tragedy is that for most, this feeling is not confronted but anesthetized. We buy, travel, eat, post, and talk about gratitude and positivity, but all this is a desperate attempt to fill a hole that keeps growing. What's missing is not motivation. What's missing is meaning. A meaning that doesn't come from outside, that isn't imposed, that isn't in a self-help book, but created by you from your own darkness. It is precisely here that the philosopher's phrase becomes more relevant than ever. Do you truly understand what he meant by "the divine is no more"? Many people repeat this phrase as a catchy saying, but almost no one comprehends its devastating depth. In the next part, we will do what few have the courage to do: truly dive into the brutal, transformative, and dangerous meaning of this phrase. Because only when you understand what the philosopher meant will you realize the size of the abyss that has opened up inside you and what can be born from that abyss. If this content resonates with you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. This is not just a provocative statement, it is a death sentence, and the philosopher knew exactly the weight it carried. He was not celebrating the divine's absence as one toasts to victory in a battle. He was lamenting, denouncing, warning, because the divine's absence, for him, meant the collapse of everything humanity believed to be eternal. But what exactly did he mean by that? To begin with, understand that the divine here is not just the Christian God. The philosopher is talking about any absolute system of values, any metaphysical structure that offers definitive answers about good and evil, the purpose of life, the origin of existence, and the fate of the soul. The divine is the idea that there is a fixed point outside of time that gives us meaning. Over the centuries, Western civilization has been built upon this idea. Right and wrong were not opinions. They were divine laws. The meaning of life was not a question, it was a dogma. There was a path, a judge, a destiny. But all this began to crumble. Science advanced, revolutions broke sacred monarchies, morality began to be seen as a human construct, and history revealed the absurdity of so many wars fought in the name of eternal truths. Thus, without realizing it, humanity was extinguishing. The candles of the altar, and one day the temple became dark. Not because someone entered and destroyed everything, but because no one believed in what was there anymore. The divine is no more, is the recognition that we no longer live as if there were an absolute truth guiding our choices. It is the end of metaphysical innocence. Life no longer comes with a divine manual. The problem with that is that even without believing anymore, we continue to search for meaning as if it were still there. The philosopher calls this nothingness. The moment we realize that all our highest values have lost their value, and there is nothing to put in their place. There is no new divine, no new manual, just the abyss. But the most disturbing point is this: we have ended its reign. It was not an accident, it was us with our skepticism, our quest for autonomy, our refusal to accept ready-made truths. It was us who tore up the old maps, and now we are lost in a dark sea, trying to pretend that we still know the direction. The philosopher knew this would leave us on the brink of collapse. That is why, in the parable of the madman, the one who announces the divine's absence enters a public square and shouts to everyone that they have not realized what they have done. He says, "Have we not yet heard the noise of the gravediggers burying the divine?" He understands that the divine's absence is a spiritual earthquake, and that most people have not even begun to feel its consequences. And you, have you felt it? Have you felt that the values you were taught no longer serve you? Have you realized that the idea of happiness you pursue is not really yours? Have you ever had the feeling that you are building your life on quicksand? If so, then you are already living within the philosopher's prophecy. But what happens when this emptiness finally catches up with you, when the loss of meaning turns into silent despair, when you realize that nothing is sacred anymore? In the next part, We will face the monster head-on. Nothingness. We will understand how it destroys everything or prepares you to be reborn. Have you ever felt that nothing really matters? That everything you do, waking up, working, smiling, completing tasks, pursuing goals, is being done out of inertia, as if your life were a script already written by someone who doesn't care about the ending? This is not fatigue. It's not laziness. This is nothingness. And the philosopher not only predicted it, but lived it. He described it with the precision of someone who plunged into the abyss and returned to tell what he saw. Nothingness occurs when all the values that supported your worldview crumble, when the ideas of good and evil, success and failure, right and wrong, reveal themselves to be arbitrary, when you understand that the universe has no secret plan for your life, that there is no hidden logic ensuring that everything will make sense in the end, and worse, that perhaps it never existed. This is the moment when the human soul stands naked, without faith, without purpose, without ground. The philosopher called this passive nothingness, the collapse of vital energy, the state of mind in which the individual gives up seeking, gives up creating, and settles into the absurd, living out of obligation, consuming to fill holes that never close. Everything seems tasteless, colorless, meaningless. He is content to survive and disguises this despair with routine distractions and irony. The typical phrase of the passive nihilist is, "Nothing really matters." But this is not clarity. It is cowardice, because nothingness is not the end. It is a stage, a process, a crossing. The problem is that most people stop halfway. The philosopher believed that nothingness was a necessary symptom of the evolution of consciousness, but he warned, if you are not strong enough to cross it will consume you, and how it consumes. It disguises itself as indifference, but inside it is pure despair. It acts as if it is fine, but feels an emptiness that tears at the chest. At night it laughs but feels no pleasure. It talks about freedom but is paralyzed. Because when everything loses meaning, even freedom becomes a burden. Nothingness is the desert of the soul, and many get lost forever in this place. But the philosopher did not want you to die in that desert. He wanted you to cross it, to burn everything that was not yours, and discover what remains standing after the destruction. Nothingness, according to him, can be the pain of the birth of a new way of being. If you have the courage not to anesthetize yourself, not to retreat, not to seek shelter in ready-made false promises of meaning, you can emerge from nothingness stronger, clearer, and freer than ever. But there is a price, and that price is suffering. The raw pain of facing the truth, the loneliness of having no answers, the anguish of having to build meaning with your own hands. And the philosopher knew this. He lived it. In The Gay Science, he describes this pain as a kind of violent purification necessary for the spirit to become deeper, sharper. The pain that tears you from the surface and forces you to dive. And that is exactly what we will talk about in the next part, because the suffering you are trying to avoid may actually be the master that will show you who you really are, and perhaps the only real chance of rebirth. Most people flee from suffering as if it were a system failure, as if feeling pain were a sign that something went wrong. We are taught from an early age to avoid everything that hurts, to seek comfort, security, stability. The idea that life should be good all the time has become a modern dogma. But the philosopher believed the opposite. He saw suffering not as a mistake, but as a requirement for greatness. In his view, suffering is the true laboratory of the soul. It is there, in sleepless nights, in painful breakups, in existential crises, that you are forced to confront what lies behind the mask. And it is there that the truth resides. He writes in The Gay Science that only suffering, great suffering, ultimately frees the spirit because only it has the strength to break the illusions you have been protecting yourself with. Only it can tear the veil of the lies you tell yourself every day. Do you want to know why you are lost? because you were never allowed to descend to the bottom of the well, because you were taught to cover the hole with distractions, with ready-made phrases, with light therapies and superficial self-care. But the philosopher knew and warned that the depth of the spirit is born only when you descend, when you sink, when you are broken in such a way that there is no other option but to rebuild yourself from within. He himself went through this. He lived sick, isolated, rejected, and immersed in existential doubts. He experienced the intimate despair of someone who has lost everything: health, faith, love, friends. But it was in that desert that he wrote his greatest ideas, not despite the pain, but because of it. Suffering for him was a furnace, a trial, that burns away everything that is false, everything that is fragile, everything that is inherited. What remains is you, naked before existence, with no escape. You only discover your strength when you have nowhere else to lean on. You only understand the value of life when you feel the weight of your own mortality. You only become true when you are willing to lose everything, including the idea you had of yourself. The philosopher did not believe in redemption without confrontation. There is no real growth without real pain. Every authentic awakening is preceded by a crisis. Every true transformation requires traversing the darkness. There is no light without shadow, and it is precisely at the moment when everything seems lost that something new can emerge, something stronger, more real, more yours. But be careful. Do not confuse this pain with empty suffering. The philosopher speaks of a suffering that purifies, that transforms. It is not about victimizing oneself. It is not about sinking into self-pity. It is about looking pain in the eyes and asking, "What are you trying to show me?" It is accepting that perhaps what is eating you inside is the part of you that needs to die for the new to be born. And this leads us to the next step, because now that everything has crumbled, now that you have faced suffering head-on, comes the hardest part, the most dangerous part, and also the most liberating. It is time to rebuild meaning, but not with ready-made recipes, not with recycled dogmas. It is time to create from scratch the foundation of your own existence. And that is exactly what we will do in the next part. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down the core ideas and gives you tools to understand yourself more deeply. The link is in the pinned comment. You have come this far. The ground has crumbled. Certainties have died. The void is exposed. Suffering can no longer be ignored. And now, what to do when all the answers you had turned out to be fragile, when the old paths no longer lead you anywhere, when even you have become strange to yourself? The philosopher believed that this was the true starting point, not the end, but the beginning, the moment when you finally have the chance to become who you are. Because only after destruction does the possibility of authentic creation arise. The human being, when freed from imposed truths, is not lost, but naked. And nakedness, as uncomfortable as it may be, is also freedom. Freedom to create, to choose, to rebuild based on what is real. But what does this mean in practice? It means that from the moment absolute values have crumbled, you become the creator of your own meaning. This is not easy. This is not beautiful. This does not come with guarantees, but it is the only way to live with dignity in a world where the divine is no more. Here are some directions, not recipes, to start this journey. 1. Stop seeking, meaning as if you were looking for a lost object. The meaning of life is not hidden in a book, in a guru, in a doctrine, in a course. Meaning is not something you find. It is something you create. It arises from what you do with your pain, with your freedom, with your choices. Ask yourself, what can I create from my emptiness? 2. Choose a value for which you are willing to suffer. The philosopher said that he who has a why can endure almost any how. What is your why? It could be art. It could be the pursuit of truth. It could be serving others genuinely. Whatever it is, it needs to be something that resonates with the innermost part of your being, something that justifies the weight of existence. 3. Start small but with integrity. Creating meaning does not require a 10-year life plan. It requires an act of courage today, a real attitude, an authentic decision, a no you never had the courage to say, a yes you always postponed. Meaning is born in gestures, in choices, in facing life as it is, without disguises. 4. Surround yourself with silence and solitude. In a world saturated with voices, you need silence to hear your own. The philosopher wrote much of his work in solitude, walking through the Alps, dialoguing with his own mind. You need moments like that, not to escape the world, but to reconnect with your own depth. 5. Have the courage to destroy what is no longer yours. Often, suffering persists because you insist on keeping alive a self that has already died, an identity that no longer represents you, a life built to please others. The philosopher believed that creation requires destruction. Let go, burn what is necessary, and see what survives the ashes. This is the true responsibility of freedom. There is no one to tell you what to do. You are alone, and that is frightening. But it is also your greatest power. You do not need to be saved. You need to create. And this creation requires blood, sweat, and soul. It requires you to face the abyss and have the audacity to draw a map in mid-air. And when you are ready for that, something changes. You no longer depend on promises. You no longer wait for a savior. You become the author, the sculptor. You transform chaos into form, pain into art, loss into drive. Life ceases to be something that happens to you and becomes something you build, an act of affirmation in the face of the absurd. But the philosopher went beyond that. He did not stop at the creation of meaning. He spoke of a type of human being that goes even deeper, one that not only overcomes nothingness but transforms it into vital force, into creative will, into the drive for transcendence. This being is the Übermensch, and it is about him that we will talk in the last part, because perhaps, in the end, the real question is not how to live, but who you are becoming. If you have made it this far, it was not by chance. Perhaps you are among those who are no longer satisfied with easy answers, who can no longer pretend that everything is fine when deep inside something is begging for change. You have felt the emptiness. You have crossed the fog. You have looked into the abyss. And now the question that remains is, what are you going to do with this brutal freedom that the philosopher offered you? The divine's absence, as we have seen, is not just the collapse of a religious belief, it is the end of spiritual comfort. It is the moment when all the crutches fall away, and you find yourself alone in front of life with no manual, no guarantees, no divine script to follow. But in this cosmic silence where so many get lost, the philosopher saw the possibility of the greatest act of human courage, to create oneself. This is where the figure of the Übermensch, the Overman, emerges. And pay attention, this is not about genetic superiority or intellectual arrogance. It is about transcendence, about overcoming the conditioned, reactive, resentful human form. The Übermensch is one who does not limit themselves to surviving in nothingness, but uses it as fuel to affirm life in its entirety, with all its pain, chaos, uncertainty, and beauty. This being does not wait for salvation. They do not seek approval. They do not need a heaven after death because they have already understood that the miracle is being alive now and that the only eternity that matters is the intensity with which you live each moment. The Übermensch creates new values. They dance on the ashes of the old world. They transform tragedy into art. They are, in their essence, a creator. And this transformation begins with small decisions. It starts when you choose to act even without guarantees, when you stop living the life that others have drawn for you, when you decide that even without absolute truths, you will still live. with depth, with passion, with integrity. Even if it hurts, even if it is difficult, even if the world does not understand. The philosopher did not want to comfort you. He wanted to shake you, to wake you up, to look at your life with eyes filled with clarity and ask, "What am I still waiting for?" Because in the end, life does not have a guaranteed meaning, but it gives you the chance to become someone worthy of living it. So now it's up to you. Comment below what part of this video impacted you the most. Where did this reflection find you? In the emptiness, in the pain, in the desire to create something new? And if this video provoked you, made you think, made you see your existence from a new perspective, don't stop here. The journey is just beginning. I will leave a playlist here with the main videos about the philosopher from the channel. Each of them delves even deeper into this philosophical crossing, because understanding the philosopher is not an event, it is a process, and this process can change your life. After all, now that the divine is no more, what are you going to create in its place? See you in the next video.